All right, good morning. I'm Rick Dancer. This is Get Real with Rick Dancer. And right now you're in my dream. Getting the community. This is Chief Chris Skinner, the Eugene Police Chief.
And we're going to get real? Is that
We're going to get real.
Okay. All right.
No, but what I like about this is we have brought together people in the community here at Togo's, and John Anderson with Togo's is our sponsor because we want to talk about downtown issues, safety in downtown, maybe the income tax proposal.
We have issues?
We have.
I thought we had that figured out.
He's kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. But we also have some people here who are really happy with some changes going on. So we got a large group of people here, and the chief has agreed to just answer some questions. So let me show you our large group of people. We'll embarrass them a little bit. But there you go. Look, we got folks here, Togo's. Well, good morning, Ashley. I know, Ashley, these are people, I do talk to people on our page like that. So does anybody have a question for the chief? You know what I think we should start off? Maybe talk a little bit to folks here about what is going on. What are some changes that are happening?
Well, good morning to everybody. And one of the things that I love doing is being able to come together and connect with members of the community and talk a little bit about your police department and kind of the direction it's going and the direction that it needs to go. I think for a long time we haven't had that tough conversation about the public safety system in Eugene and kind of some of the gaps that we have and what we need to do to start making incremental changes moving forward, because we're not going to do this overnight. I mean, our system that we have now and the landscape that we live in now is decades in the making. And so it reminds me of a story my dad told me when he was on the USS Enterprise, which was the largest aircraft carrier in the ocean at one point, that turning that thing around took about 15 miles to turn it around. It's kind of what we're at now. Small incremental changes so we don't have organizational whiplash as we make these changes. But there are some things that we need to pay attention to and that we need to do differently. And so I like having these conversations and be able to answer your questions. So we can talk about payroll tax stuff. We can talk about downtown and some of the things that we've done last summer and are trying to do this summer. We can talk about the difference between what you see that makes us feel uncomfortable, that erodes some of the livability, and what is actually criminal behavior. And oftentimes those two things don't match up. And so we need to have that tough conversation. So we can talk about any of that stuff and you'll get kind of the straight scoop. And one of the things I always pride myself on is if I don't have the answer to your question, I'm just going to tell you I don't know. And we'll figure it out, and we'll see if we can get connected and get you the ansers to your questions. So
I did that when I ran for office. They didn't like it at all.
They didn't like that?
No.
Yeah, I know a lot, but I don't obviously know everything that is going to meet every need that we probably have in the room. And so we can connect you with the right resources and be able to do that.
So who has a question? What do you guys have? What do you want? Okay, come here. Can you come over here?
All right.
Come over here.
Are we going there? Or are they?
Yeah, let's go over here.
I'll come to you.
Okay, here. Okay, tell me who you are and what's your...
Hi, I'm Eugene Sterry. I'm with First Interstate Bank.
And you're located right down here.
I am located a stone's throw from where we stand right now. So my question is a few weeks ago, I had attended a friend gathering here downtown and just really enjoyed the landscape downtown. There's a lot of great restaurants and venues to attend. But in the middle of that was still, of course, the problem that we're aware of. And so I guess my question is, where, with the limited resources that we have currently, where is that priority? Where is that priority with limited resources?
Go ahead, Chris.
So, one of the things you may have noticed that, several years ago, the city formed kind of the downtown team. And that precinct is on Olive, just down from to dedicate more resources to that downtown with extra bodies on overtime. The school resource officers that are out of school will come downtown. And you've probably seen last summer and this summer our motor officers downtown more than you've ever seen them before. And there's really no motor reason for them to be down here as far as traffic safety is concerned, because you don't really have a speeding just to create a presence for us, to include community safety officers which come downtown so they can have really good conversations with people. The challenge that we have, even with those resources, the challenge that we have is oftentimes people's concern or people's frustration with some of the downtown stuff is stuff that's not criminal behavior. And so what you're trying to do is build a system where your police officers are actually addressing criminal behavior first and foremost, and then some of the other livability issues that are going on, some of the things that are either being said or the things that are maybe not being said, and just the mere presence of individuals is not something that the police department can legislate. And so we will try to be downtown and communicate with those folks, find out where they're from, find out what they're doing in Eugene, try to connect them with services if they need services. But so many of those folks are in town that don't want to have anything to do with services. We're finding that more and more and more, that we're offering services to help them get to maybe a better place or a hand up to a better place, and they don't want to avail themselves of services. They have absolutely no desire to do that.
Chief, can I ask you?
Sure.
Real quick, I'm going to throw something in here real fast. So that's one of the things I think that people notice a lot is that they see that we're not defining who these folks are. We have homeless people in Eugene, and then we have people there's mental illness people that are hanging out in Eugene. I was recently in Idaho, Montana. Every place I went, I said I was from Eugene, and they said, we were there, and your downtown looks horrible. We're getting a reputation, and I've talked to the folks on the street, and they're not from here. They're from other places, and they tell me we come here because we can get anything we need, and we don't have to do anything. Yeah. And I'm not being mean, and people, you can come after me later if you want to, but that's what they say, and that's what businesses are experiencing too. Right. These are not our local homeless people.
No, we're experiencing the same thing. We have different demographics within our unhoused population, and some of those are our people that are struggling, that are on the verge of homelessness or recently homeless or chronically homeless, that really, really want to put themselves in a position and avail themselves of services and try and move to a better place. They want to get to stable and affordable housing as quickly as they possibly can. Another demographic we have are the ones that are just chronically mentally ill or substance abused and addicted, that's a long-term wraparound solution to get them to a place of wellness. And that's a completely different story around statewide resources or the lack thereof that we need to address. And then the other two demographics that we've seen are the ones that kind of drift in and out of town. We call them the travelers. Around country fair time, you see a bunch come in. No desire to leave Eugene in a better place than they found it. Just come in, avail themselves of whatever services, do whatever they want. We really struggle with that population from a police department perspective because there's just very little respect for this community, the people in the community, and especially authority. And then the other part of the homeless population we see is those that just enjoy the lifestyle of being unhoused, where there's no responsibility, and will avail themselves of services that meet their needs at the moment, but really aren't working hard to do anything other than just to exist and be unhoused. And that's evidenced by several attempts with certain individuals to ask them if they would like to have a safe and clean camping spot at one of our dawn-to-dawn spots that we have space at. But because it's supervised by a social service outfit, they don't want to have anything to do with any place that has rules. And so the city is not going to just give them space where they can live without any kind of governance or oversight or organization. That's just not healthy. And so we're really resisting that, and I resist that. And so the key for me, and the key I think for my police department, is how do we move away from trying to be all things to everyone and try to be really good at a few things. Who really needs our attention? Who do we really need to focus on trying to help? And who do we really want to help move up and out of homelessness? And that's why the police department sponsors 9 Conestoga huts that has case management for those people that really need that space to stabilize and be able to move to some kind of supportive shelter or housing. That's where we want to be in that game of helping those people. And so that's what we're proud of, amongst other things, as being sponsors of 9 Conestogas, so that we can do that. And so that's a great example of how we can make a difference together.
Who else has a question? Okay, hold on. Let me just get this here.
Hi, I'm Jen Bell. I own Bell & Funk. We're a marketing firm in downtown, been downtown for 10 years. I'm also co-chair of Downtown Eugene Merchants. And I hear everything you're saying, and it's all accurate from my experience. I think what changed recently was the report from the Register Guard about crime increasing over the last 5 years by 86% downtown. So I'm just wondering if you can provide some context or something, because I'm having a hard time knowing what to tell businesses.
I can. So I'm a big fan of statistics. I think statistics drive decision making oftentimes, but I also know that statistics can tell a story if you want it to. And one of the things that happened in the recent article with the Register Guard that identified 232 assaults in the downtown core, which is up considerably from before, is two things. Would be mine is the way we report assaults is different now than it was back then. We went from a UCR, which is Uniform Crime Reporting, to the NIBRS, which is a National Incident-Based Reporting System, so it more accurately records criminal behavior. So you're going to get more incidents lumped into the assault category, number one. So that's why that assault category is bigger, and I'm not sure that was articulated, but that's different. Number two, in that assault category, I did some digging, and shouldn't shock you to know that the majority of our assaults happen on weekends and weekend nights between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. And you understand that we have a lot of people that come downtown and enjoy themselves and drink a lot and end up getting in fights, and that's a part of it. The other part of that is there's a significant number in that assault category that are restraining orders and stalking orders. So anytime you have an area with a large population of employees that are struggling with somebody that's either in a bad relationship or stalking, is that gets dumped into there. So as a matter of fact, between last year and this year, we only went up one aggravated assault between 17 and 18, which is not unusual to have one more. So we went from like 23 to 24 or 24 to 25. I don't remember the number. But that's why it's important when we talk about statistics that are going to define an area as being either safe or unsafe, is that we do a deep dive and add extra layers to be able to put that in context to know it's a different reporting system, so it's not fair to compare. It's an apple and oranges comparison. And what's in that big, broad category of assaults? Because on the face of things, 232 assaults, you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But what's also interesting about that is those aren't stranger-on-stranger assaults. And this was all predicated on the unfortunate, horrible incident that happened in Starbucks with a severely mentally ill person, and our buddy Russ, who was the victim of that, who's recovering great, by the way. I went and visited him in the hospital last week, and he's doing great. But that starts that conversation, and then when you follow it up with these assault numbers, it makes people feel uneasy, and I totally get that.
Hey, Chrissy. Oh, go ahead.
That's why I wanted to understand the context, because I also work with data, and I know you can make it say whatever you want it to say. So is Melinda or somebody in your department addressing that?
We do the best we can to kind of message that after something like that happens and we get these questions, is be able to start trying to drive some of the information around that. And so Melinda and John, who do a great job in my office, often put that stuff out. And my understanding is that much like with the hate and bias report that just came out that lists Eugene as the number one place for hate and bias crimes, which is absolute nonsense when it comes to, it's not hard to be number one when you're the only one in the game, okay? We're the only one participating to a measurable degree, and of course we're number one. So reaching back out to the Oregonian and saying, can we put this into context a little bit? Because you know what, we have some other fairly large jurisdictions that aren't reporting any numbers at all, and so it makes Eugene look like, but that's another one of those statistical games that we play that on the face of things, it can tell whatever story it wants to, and we just need to be good about telling our story.
Who else?
I have a follow-up question to my last question. So my question is in the gap, right? So you can only truly do anything about illegal activity, but what about that mild activity that will eventually lead to that illegal activity, small assaults that we had happen on one of our employees? So those types of things where you know it's going to escalate, but really there's not anything legally you can do. What kind of things are you looking at in that realm? Because I feel like that probably happens quite a bit.
Well, one of the things that's always a really, really good strategy for a police department or a public safety system is to, obviously be able to respond to criminal activity and do a great job of investigating those particular crimes. But some of the gaps, we can minimize those gaps with really good crime prevention. I mean, really, we'd like to be in the game of crime never occurring at all, and that we actually are doing a good job of preventing crime before it actually occurs. And so some of the things that we've tried to do that we're hoping makes a difference is you see downtown ambassadors walking around and being a presence in their, I think they're in their blue shirts, walking around and being a presence. You know, the park ambassadors and the park blocks doing those types of things. The community services officers, which kind of look like police officers, but they're not, being downtown and engaging people in dialogue and being visible. Some of the private security contracts we have to be able to bridge some of the gaps that we have that we can't get to in the downtown core, and then the downtown team with all of that presence. So what you hope is through all of that and technology. So, you know, the Guardian trailers, which are, in my mind, a great resource for us, which are the camera trailers that we can put in different areas that just keep an eye on activity. People have a tendency to behave themselves a little bit when they feel like they're being watched, interestingly enough. So let's put them in strategic locations that say, you know what, come enjoy yourself, be respectful, be a great community member, but understand that if you're going to be a knucklehead and engage in criminal activity, we're gonna be able to see that. And we're going to be able to record that and come back and have a conversation with you. So all of those things are important, to include the downtown with the new downtown manager being good about crime prevention through environmental design. So a great example of that is you see the planters going up everywhere, some of the areas that are actually chained off to prohibit people from actually sleeping or camping or being there. You know, we're constantly looking at ways to try and beautify downtown and go through kind of crime prevention through environmental design to make sure that we're deterring some of that behavior. The piece that's really hard for us is some of the behaviors that really frustrate people, which is the things that come out of people's mouths. And that is unacceptable, and it's not warranted, especially to our female population. I hate to admit this, but unfortunately they seem to be the brunt of the derogatory comments that we hear downtown. The challenge we have with that is many of those comments are not criminal in nature. And so if we're there, we are absolutely 100% poised and prepared to have a conversation with somebody and tell them, you know what, if you can't behave yourself, we would like you to go somewhere else than being down here harassing our people, until it becomes a criminal issue, and then we can really, really get involved. All we can do is try and hold people accountable the best we can to be a good citizen downtown. But we are mindful of the fact that sometimes things that come out of people's mouths leave people feeling very, very uncomfortable, but nevertheless is not necessarily criminal all the time.
So, Chief, can you change the definition of a hate crime? Because, and I'm just going to ask this this is the thought that I've had. If I was downtown screaming some of the things I've heard people screaming at women walking downtown, I feel like I would be arrested, talked to, accosted, something. But can we change the language because isn't that sexual harassment if you're using, you know what I mean? That's what. I know what you mean. That's what I hear when I'm downtown.
And I think it's important to note that you know, there's not a crime on the books that specifically says hate crime. The crime on the books is called intimidation, and it has a hate or bias component to it. But what we have a lot of in Eugene is hate incidents. We have incidents of swastikas being posted everywhere, you know, which is a criminal mischief, and so that is a crime with a hate bias to it. But there's a lot of hate incidents that go on, and most of those hate incidents are the things that come out of people's mouths. And, you know, that's very, very hard to legislate because you have some free speech, constitutionally protected free speech components to that obviously muddy the lines here. The key to any kind of crime is the perception of the victim. If the victim is able to articulate that they are fearful if there's an imminent threat for their safety, then that's kind of a different component, because we do have a harassment statute where offensive physical contact. So if I poked Rick in the chest and was after him, that's offensive physical contact. Or behavior that's likely to incite a violent response from somebody can be deemed as harassment. So some of these things could blend into harassment, which is a low-level misdemeanor, but it all is predicated on the victim and the way the victim felt and the response the elicited response that the victim would have had as a result of that. So it's really not as black and white as we'd like it to be.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Angela Root, and I work in the Citizens Building. And oftentimes for lunch, coworkers and I will like to go down to Kesey Square, and there's a tacos cart there that we like to eat at. Well, I'd say the last couple times I've gone down there, I've been harassed. This last time, there was a fella. But anyway, so my concern is I hear a lot about, the people with the mental illness and trying to help them get a leg up. But what about the businesses? Because I won't go down there anymore. And, there are others that won't go down there because they don't feel safe. And I feel bad for they're losing my business, they're losing other people's business. So I think it's great that we're addressing the needs of the people that are coming in, but we need to hear more about the businesses that are losing business because, we have these people and last year there was a police presence down there. I think you guys set up a booth every Wednesday, and that made me feel good. I knew on a Wednesday I could go down there, you'd be down there, and I'd feel more comfortable, but I haven't seen that this summer, and I would love for that to come back. Mine is more self-serving. I like to go down there and eat lunch, but I'm not comfortable just walking around. And I've been instructed by my husband not to even walk around by myself. So, I appreciate everything you guys are doing, but I think that's one area that I would love to see a little more presence on that entire corner, because a lot of us are out having lunch and walking around down there.
And you hear that story, like when I'm doing these things, I hear it over and over again, is that and then I hear, city officials saying, well, I feel safe. Well, it doesn't really matter if you feel safe. It's like, what about the people who are not doing business in downtown Eugene because they don't feel safe?
Yeah, it's a tough one because all of us have different levels of comfort with conflict and what we see. Obviously I would feel safe downtown, but I get to dress like this, right? And nobody's going to say anything to me. But I have kids, a 12 and a 10-year-old, that if I bring them downtown, it makes them nervous. And some of that is nervousness around seeing something for the first time and not being exposed maybe to somebody that's homeless or somebody that's talking to themselves or doing that kind of thing. And so I try to inoculate them a little bit and try and get them downtown to understand that we have a lot of people that are struggling in our community. But I certainly understand that there is a difference between the statistical conversation around whether downtown is safe or not and the perception of safety. Those are not mutually exclusive. You have to have the conversation about both, because depending on who you talk to, that perception can be very, very different. And depending on people's experiences, that can be very, very different. And so we need to be mindful of that. What we were hoping to do this year is kind of replicate what we did last year as best we could, understanding our resources. So the downtown team, the ambassadors, the motors downtown, the SROs downtown, the overtime bid shifts downtown. And there's probably times where it feels better at times than others. And depending on what's going on, or if we have a training day and officers are away at training, it feels like there's a lack of police presence. And other times where you feel like, boy, every corner I seem to come across a police officer. So that's always going to ebb and flow, whether it's downtown or in any neighborhood we have, or even our answering for calls for service. But we really were hoping to try and replicate what we did last year, this year. And if we've missed the mark in a couple of areas, I do appreciate hearing some of the feedback around that, because at my level sometimes I don't always get a chance to hear that feedback. I've got people doing things so many layers below me that oftentimes that feedback doesn't get all the way up to me, and so that's why these types of things are really important to do.
Greg Rachichi. My question is, the Guardian trailers definitely seemed, from what I've seen, is where there's a congregation of people, Guardian trailer goes up, they disperse. How many of those do we have? Is there a plan to add more? Because I think that seems to be very, very effective.
Thank you for that, because that was one of the things that I felt like this police department really struggled with, was leveraging technology. We're really behind in the technological sense. And cities our size leverage surveillance all the time for a variety of things. We do it already with like our traffic engineering at intersections to be able to gauge. That's how they make really good decisions about traffic patterns, is through surveillance. So getting those 3 trailers was important for a variety of reasons across the entire city. And there's been a tremendous demand for those, not only in the downtown core, but out in West Eugene, at many of our businesses that were experiencing some theft and issues around that. So there was no plan for any more than 3. My master plan was to start with 3 and get this community kind of inoculated to what technology can help us do. And as you can imagine, it was met with mixed reviews around oversight and government oversight and privacy issues. But I've maintained all along that where we're putting these trailers are in public open space that somebody should not have an expectation of privacy. If you're going to be in Kesey Square doing whatever it is you want to do to enjoy the day, don't expect a measure of privacy there. And so we're not doing this to surveil people. We're not doing this in their private homes. We're not doing this in their private businesses or even in private kind of corners and nooks and crannies of neighborhoods. This is an open public space where we see people congregate, where we've had complaints about behavior or we have businesses specifically ask us, please, will you bring a Guardian trailer and do this? It's no different than in neighborhoods we have requests for people to bring the radar trailers into their neighborhoods to try and slow traffic down. It's a traffic calming device. The Guardian trailers are a behavior calming device that we use, and from time to time, we're able to get that footage and actually make good cases and identify suspects when criminal behavior actually occurs. So.
They seem really common in any major city you go to. And even in London, there's closed circuit TV in use everywhere signs. So I'm totally comfortable with it. But just curious, what is the expense of one of those things, and or will you have the ability to add more in the next year, 2 years?
Yeah, my hope is that we'll be in a good position over the next few years to do a variety of things. I need to tell you, whether you agree with a payroll tax or any level of tax to support an enhanced level of public safety, your police department is going to forever change over the next 3 years. You guys, it's like living with chronic pain. Is you just learn to live with it. You have no idea what it's going to be like to have enough police officers and support staff to meet your needs until we actually do it. It reminds me when I finally got my hip replaced. I limped around for 2 years and just made it work until I finally went in and got the stupid thing replaced. And then the day after I was done, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what pain-free living feels like. You don't know what pain-free living feels like yet. And so through this payroll tax and that mechanism that we've found to be the best worst option to be able to raise revenue, it's going to add a capacity to our entire system that is going to change the landscape of public safety here that you've never experienced before. And it's going to take us a few years to get there, but it's the right direction we need to go, because what we're doing now isn't working, and status quo means we're going to still continue to trend in the wrong direction. Calls for service are going to keep going up, and we're going to keep going down in our ability to service those calls for service, so we've got to do something differently. So part of that is changing the entire system, and some of that may be technology that we can use to do that.
Anybody have a question? I'm going to get you guys too, okay? Right, here.
Thank you so much for being here. I heard you speak at the Leadership Eugene Springfield class, I believe last November, and I think your message is getting out there and improving. My question has to do with how do we keep the momentum going? Because I feel like around the homelessness issue and crime and statistics and telling the story, I think that that's getting out and more people are listening, and definitely improvements in your recruitment efforts. And I feel this is leading up to the 2021 IAAF games, and that's great. We need it, and that's a great motivator. But how do we keep that going beyond that benchmark? And can you put my mind at ease? Sure. Thank you.
So I'm going to make a bold statement, and I appreciate that question, because part of this is how do we make this sustainable? How do we, because it took us decades, we spent decades of existing in this space, and it's going to take us several years to kind of, evolve out of it or evolve up and out of it. Part of a key component to that is we need to wake up the silent majority in this community. There's so many people that are supportive of police, supportive of doing something different, that are supportive of this city government, the city manager, the city leadership, making some good decisions that you often don't hear from. And it's probably time for us to kind of come together as a community and have a kind of a louder voice around what we want Eugene to be as we continue to do this. I often say that Eugene and this police department, depending on who you talk to, is the second largest city and the second largest police department in the state. Our friends in Salem may disagree with us, but we're going to, for sake of argument, we're going to call us number 2. Well, it's time for us to grow up and start acting like it. And so that's what my job is with this police department, is start acting like the second largest police department in the state. So waking up the silent majority to support what we're trying to do, understanding that we have people that are in crisis that need help. We can't abandon our efforts there, because that's what makes Eugene so special and unique, is that we do have that caring, compassionate spirit for our people that live here, but also understanding that we need strategic investments in our systems to be able to make a difference. And that's why I appreciate the fact that this council took a bold statement, even though it maybe didn't feel very good, made a bold statement a year ago about the bridge funding, and more recently about implementation of a payroll tax. And then it was the attempted referral only garnered about 50% of the votes even needed to get it on the ballot. I think that's a strong message about people ready to do something different. And so that's what we're hoping to do. And so 2021 is a good finish line for the track and field championships, but a starting line for Eugene, because the key is, what do we look like the day after? You know, we work towards 2021, which is going to be a huge, huge endeavor. But the key is, what do we look like the day after, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that? And how do we use it as a springboard for being better, as opposed to using it as a finish line for where we want to get? And so we have those conversations all the time about what that looks beyond the finish line for us. And a big part of that is, for me, in this public safety system, is building you a system that you can be proud of. And the foundational component of that is hiring the right people. Is hiring the right people to serve your needs and meet your needs is my number one priority at a foundational level, and we're working hard about that. And I may even have some potential recruits in this room that have already talked to me about when they can be a part of the team. So we're working on that. I'm always recruiting, so that's always good.
So Chief, some people on here are asking, they said, I don't mind paying the tax, but they don't feel like the council is really representative of the whole community with taking care of what's going on, so they don't feel like the money is going to be spent to do what they feel needs to be done, and instead it'll just end up, because this problem's been going on for decades.
So the good news is what we did is we built into the ordinance some specific and articulable lockbox mechanisms around that money, so it doesn't get bled off and it doesn't supplant the general fund. So this is to enhance the general fund revenue. So this is above and beyond, and it can only be spent on those things that we articulated in the the community safety initiative, which is police, fire, municipal court, some small measure of homeless services, and prevention and intervention services. That's all it can be spent on, and the accountability mechanisms for that will be seen in the ordinance. With a citizen review panel that will be reviewing the spending, an annual audit and annual report that will articulate where the spending is, so that this public can see that we're spending the money where we're supposed to.
Who picks that citizen board? Somebody wants to
know. I don't know the answer to that. My guess is that it's either it comes out of the city manager's office or the council, but it'll be a citizen advisory board that will be able to say, you guys are doing exactly what you said you were doing, or raise their hand and say, wait a minute, this is starting to get a little bit of mission creep. This feels like supplanting, or whatever the case may be. So we're hoping to have some really strong accountabilities around that money, so that you know that in my case, my $25 a month or whatever I spend specifically is going to go to enhancing community safety.
Okay, I got 3 guys over here real quick that want to talk to you. Hey, Chief, yeah, come this way. Okay, guys.
Okay, my question is, I know that you want more money for taxes, right? All right, and you say we have the second largest police department in the state. Why do we need more money to accomplish more when we have a problem here in our downtown and campus area? I'm in the campus area, and if we go over the bridge into Springfield, they don't have that problem, and they have a tiny police department.
Well, one of the things you have to be able to gauge is police departments based on the population they serve is all relative. So there's a couple of metrics that you can use to do that. One metric that's been used for years is officers per thousand. And so I don't know how many sworn Springfield has, So it's a city of 58,000, and you look at how many officers they have to be able to serve a city of 58,000. We have 192 officers to serve a city of 170,000. It's 1.12 officers per thousand, which is one of the lowest in the state. And so there's just a math problem there that would tell you that, at first blush, tell you, hey, you're a little bit understaffed to meet the needs. The second piece is looking at the uniqueness of the community itself. And Eugene Municipal Court handles all misdemeanor crimes. And Eugene files about 5,000 misdemeanor crimes a year through municipal court. Second in the state, only to Multnomah Circuit Court for all of the Portland area. So our misdemeanor crime here is really, really, really bad. And so part of what we're trying to do is understand that you don't change the direction on driving down misdemeanor crime by just going from call to call to call to call after it's already happened. The way you change the landscape in public safety is you have discretionary time for officers to actually make traffic stops, contact people that look suspicious in neighborhoods late at night, actually have that proactive time to actually go out and do good police work. And where we're at in the landscape we're in now is about 4 minutes of every officer's hour they have discretionary time. We need to make that, we need to triple or quadruple that so that they can actually start engaging in community policing activities and proactive policing. That's how you drive crime down, not responding after it's already happened. And that's just for years, that's just been kind of the direction we've gone, and it's just hitting a tipping point right now. And so part of that is creating capacity and being able to do that. About 60% of the general fund dollars already go to law enforcement, but it's just not keeping up with the pace of the criminal behavior that we see here.
Chief, one of the things that people are talking about on here is in order for people to really feel safe and good about the payroll tax is defining who is going to pick that board. The Citizens Board, they're saying, how do I get on it? We want to make sure that that's going to be people that are representing the whole community, not just certain sections.
Yeah, I can find out that specifically the answer to that and get back to you, Rick, and you can maybe put something out. I don't know if it's in the council's hand or the city manager's hands. One thing that I've been really, really impressed with, though, through the city manager's office is your city manager, John Reese, the people he pulled together to really have these tough conversations have been a cross-section of people from all over this community. And some of you may have been a part of those discussions. And if you've been this last 15 years living in this space with me, there's been multiple times I'm out speaking to all demographics in the city about the need and what we need to do differently. And so we'll continue to be mindful of that, but I'll get you that answer.
Okay. You guys have
just real quick, and it's been discussed, but I live in the campus area, but I've been here since '98, and it seems like we just put a Band-Aid on an issue and hope and pray that it doesn't get to the next neighborhood or anything like that. Case in point is over the Ferry Street Bridge, underneath the bridge, coming off of I-5 on that bike course. I know there's a law, or you guys posted something. I rode through there the other day. There's graffiti back on there, and they're underneath the bridge. So I'm all for, I understand people have issues. That's just something that's in Eugene, but we got to get past the issues and really get tough on this in a sense. But how do we get past, we put a Band-Aid on it, it works for 2 weeks, and then they're just right back doing the same, behavior, so to speak.
So two things I will point to that is maybe a little bit more of not a Band-Aid issue, but maybe a little bit more of a permanent issue, maybe a tourniquet issue, if we want to qualify it as that. One of the things that I was really proud of this council, and you may have seen it just recently, is what we did with the planting strips, giving the authority back to the property owner, the adjacent landowner, to be able to trespass people off the city right-of-way, which is that space between the vertical curb and the sidewalk that has landscaped areas, and being able to say, for people to be able to say, you can't camp here. And so I think that's a great example of legislation that we can impose to start fixing the problem. The challenge that we have with some of our underpasses is the fact that we have a jurisdictional issue with the Oregon Department of Transportation. And so they're the ones that own that property. They're the ones that can trespass people. And ODOT, as a great state partner, doesn't have the resources to be here every other day to do that. And so you see it get cleaned up and moved along, and then you see it slowly come back, and cleaned up and move along and slowly come back. And so we're constantly working with our state partners to see if we can get them down here more often and more quickly to be able to deal with those areas that feel like it's just like Band-Aid, we think it's fixed, comes back. Band-Aid, comes back. The bike paths are an ongoing issue around the city because we have people camping along our riverbanks, and we're working on a solution for that. And especially in that Ferry Street Bridge area, we're working right now on some engineered solutions for those underpasses to actually prohibit and curtail people from gathering underneath there. We're hearing that loud and clear. People are feeling unsafe, and oftentimes it is unsafe just to maneuver through there regardless of what anybody does. And so we're working on some engineered solutions. We have a challenge because it's anywhere that it's city-owned property based on some opinions out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is kind of in fair play for people to camp. We have an illegal camping ordinance in this town. It's not lawful for you to camp illegally, but it's a civil infraction, not a crime. And so it's just a citation. And so oftentimes it's just citation after citation after citation with very little remedy. So when I talk about a system that needs to approach this, it's a system of us being able to respond and address issues. It's a system of being able to have enough prosecutors to prosecute the crimes we have. It's a system of trying to enhance more jail space for those offenders that belong in jail, and the ones that don't belong in jail vacate so we can make space for those that need to go to jail. So it's a system approach that we need to take. But one example of the Band-Aid is the ODOT issue. The other one is the trespass issue. And street crimes right now is spending a lot of time trying to meet the needs of this community that actually want people trespass off of that planting strip. And so they're spending some time doing that. And we may be moving the problem around a little bit, but eventually moving that problem around is going to mean one of two things. Either they want to avail themselves of some place that's a permanent camping, supported permanent camping spot that has services and has some oversight, and they'll eventually say, it's worth it for me to go there, or they may choose to go somewhere else. And I don't know if that to be the case, if that's happening now, but we're trying to be responsive to property and business owners' needs when it comes to that planting strip.
I just wanted to talk about what I think that you guys are doing right, and I wanted to I want to talk about the Eugene Police Foundation, and I really appreciate you touched on the Starbucks stabbing, and I really appreciate that we have an opportunity to see and hear the good that the Police Foundation does, because it engages guys like me that go, how can I help? And I am and want to continue to be a regular supporter of the Police Foundation and the good that you do in the community for guys like Good Samaritan that helps somebody out and gets their glasses broken. It's that the changes in leadership with you coming on board is very noticeable. I look at things like the street crimes unit. I work for as an independent for the owner that's hosting this here on his campus properties, and I have for 35 years. And I've seen a lot of changes on downtown and university area that's gotten significantly worse. And last year was probably the height of it. I felt like the heroin problem, the dealing was out of control, and there was no police anywhere. Here, as a contractor, I'm down there armed. I wear a body camera. I've got pepper spray. I've got a taser because I'm chasing these people off that know that there's no police down there. It's the same thing as your guy's police car getting stolen on High Street. Honestly, I laughed about it. I thought, now you understand that the problem with the heroin dealing down on campus, that even those guys aren't afraid of you. They jump in your car and take it. And so what you've done with the street crimes unit has made a huge, huge impact on how our tenants feel safe on campus, about the petty crime that's going on, the thousands of hours that I spend repairing the damage that those people cause breaking into things to feed their habits. And it's made a huge improvement on it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll just maybe touch on a couple things. For those of you that don't know, the Police Foundation is not connected to the police department. It's an arm's length relationship with a 501c3 that raises money to meet critical gaps that we may have. And I'm mindful of this community stepping up and filling a lot of those gaps with the staff and resources we need. And so we've kind of turned the foundation to a different direction. And what this gentleman is talking about is specifically a community cares fund that I've asked them to stand up. Officers almost on a weekly basis are coming out of pocket, trying to meet certain people's needs: diapers for babies, blankets for kids, hotel stays for domestic violence victim that they have that doesn't want to be in the system or doesn't want to avail themselves of services. And this community cares fund is an opportunity for officers and sergeants to have a debit card with a spending limit to be able to do those things through the generous donations of this community. And most recently, when we had the stabbing at Starbucks, the 2 unhoused individuals that intervened and tackled the suspect sustained some injuries. And while the core of their medical bills were handled through the Oregon Health Plan, there were things that weren't handled: ongoing care, bandages, broken glasses, certain types of things that the Eugene Police Department stepped in and took those guys shopping on a couple of different occasions to get their needs met through community cares. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're doing and trying to do for people that we need to be able to do. So I appreciate that. The second thing you pointed out was a city our size not having a street crimes unit was just, couldn't believe that we didn't have that function. You heard me talk earlier about officers need to have discretionary time to go out and deal with criminal behavior. That's what this team does. They don't answer calls for service per se by the radio. They have the time to go out and deal with things. They've shut down houses in West University area. They've shut down houses up in the off of Coburg Road in North Eugene. They're dealing with a lot of the types of issues we're dealing. They're doing controlled buys and trying to do something about the low level drug use that we're seeing in our community. And what's interesting is it was only 4 officers and a supervisor for the most part of this last year, and now late June I've got 8 officers and 2 supervisors out there doing this. And so we're going to start seeing even more of a profound impact from street crimes out there doing that. But that's a great example of how your police department needs to kind of grow up and become the police department you deserve to have as you have function. We need to pay attention to our narcotics enforcement. We need to get a function back that deals with the mid and upper mid-level dealers in our community and let the DEA deal with the high-level drug trafficking organizations and let us deal with this. We need to have a function that pays attention to internet crimes against children and the online enticement of our children and the child pornography that's being shared and files that are being shared profusely around this community. Those are the types of things that we want to grow up and become and be able to talk about the successes and the victories. But first and foremost is building this patrol staff to meet the basic level needs that you have when you have calls for service. We absolutely have to shore up the backbone of this organization with our patrol staff, and we're working on that right now.
Chief, I just want to thank you for
Sure.
coming down. You stayed way longer than I told your people we were.
Okay.
But thank you for coming down and talking to people. You guys, if you do have questions, the chief is very accessible. I just had to call and ask, and he came. I haven't had that all the time, but I was a reporter back then, so it was different. And you guys, thank you all for, it just kind of shows that our community really does care, and thanks for being civil. This is how civility happens. We can do this in our community, and I'm sure that the chief will be out much more talking about this payroll tax as the days come on.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of opportunity to talk about this, and it frees me up a little bit recently after the referral signatures kind of came and went. Frees me up to be able to really have these good conversations with people. So I'll look forward to that.
All right, Chris, thank you. All right, you guys, thanks a lot. And that's Get Real with Rick Dancer. So we are thanking Togo's, John Anderson with Togo's here in downtown Eugene for sponsoring this. We're going to do this every other month with different issues going on in the town. Remember, Togo's is always here with your sandwiches, and they also cater to your catering needs as well. Thanks for joining us. I'll tell you what, this was like my dream. This is how community conversations should happen. Civility matters, and people need to listen. So hopefully we'll get some answers today, and hopefully you guys can also write the chief if you have other questions or comments. He's very accessible through the website. You can write him and let him know what's going on. And thank you for paying attention. I don't know where we're going to be in the next couple of days. I'm too excited about what just happened. All right. Thank you, guys. See you later. Have a good day. Share this on your page because you never know who might be out there that can see this, okay? All right. We'll talk to you later. Again, live from Togo's, our sponsor. Come on down and get a sandwich today. See you later.